Your wife is dead, mine's alive. Priorities, Dad. My son Danny said this to me at his daughter's birthday party in front of 30 guests, after announcing he'd sold my late wife's 1967 Ferrari for $85,000. I felt my face burning with shame as every eye in that room turned to stare at me. The glass in my hand slipped to the floor and shattered, just like something inside my chest. I had spent 43 years loving Helen and 2 years mourning her, and that car was the last piece of her I had left. But Danny didn't know what I knew about that Ferrari. He didn't know what I'd done 6 months earlier when I started seeing the signs. And he definitely didn't know what that car was really worth. My name is Charles Bennett, and I'm a retired mechanical engineer who spent 50 years thinking respect was automatic between family. I was wrong. 3 days later, I taught my son the most expensive lesson of his life. But before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is there. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about family, justice, and the price of disrespect. I met Helen Walsh in 1980 at a Boeing Company picnic. She was 24, wearing a yellow sundress, and laughing at something her friend had said. I was 26, fresh out of engineering school, and completely tongue-tied. It took me 3 months to ask her out. 3 more to tell her I loved her. We married in 1983, and I bought her that 1967 Ferrari Shelby Cobra as a wedding gift with money I'd saved for 2 years. It wasn't practical. We couldn't afford it. But Helen's face when she saw those keys made every sacrifice worth it. "Charles Bennett," she said, using my full name like she did when she was serious. "Are you crazy?" "Crazy about you," I told her. We drove that car everywhere. Date nights, weekend trips to the coast, grocery runs that turned into adventures. Helen would put her hand out the window, feeling the wind, and laugh like she was 20 again. Even after Danny was born in 1986, we'd strap his car seat in the back and take family drives. For 40 years, that Ferrari sat in our garage like a time machine. Every time I started the engine, I could smell Helen's lavender perfume and hear her laugh. When she died of liver cancer 2 years ago, I made a promise at her bedside. I'd keep that car running, keep it perfect, keep our memories alive. But I didn't know Danny had already decided those memories didn't matter anymore. Danny used to love that car as much as we did. When he was 8, he'd beg me to let him help wash it in the driveway. I taught him how to check the oil, change the spark plugs, feel the engine's rhythm. His small hands would trace the curves of the hood while I explained horsepower and torque. "Dad, can I drive it when I'm older?" he'd ask. "Someday, son, when you're ready." Those were good years. Danny inherited my mechanical curiosity and Helen's charm. He could fix anything, talk to anyone, make friends wherever we went. I was proud of him. Things changed when he married Ashley in 2015. She was pretty, ambitious, and had opinions about everything, especially our outdated lifestyle. The first time she came to dinner, she looked at Helen's antique furniture and said, "Don't you think it's time for an update?" Helen just smiled. Some things are too precious to replace. After the wedding, visits became less frequent. Danny stopped calling just to chat. When they did come over, Ashley would comment on our waste of space, the garage full of Helen's gardening tools, my workshop, and especially that Ferrari. "It just sits there," she'd say. In California, that garage space would be worth a fortune. Danny would nod along, but never defended our choices, never defended us. I thought it was just adjustment. New marriage, new priorities. Helen said to give them time. But time only made things worse. Helen fought liver cancer for 8 months. During her final weeks, Danny and Ashley visited twice. Both times Ashley spent most of the visit on her phone, talking about house prices and investment opportunities. "Mom looks tired," Danny would say, like Helen couldn't hear him. "She's dying, honey," Ashley would respond. "Maybe we should talk about practical things, like my house being too big for one person, like senior living communities with better support systems, like liquidating assets that were just gathering dust." The day after Helen's funeral, they brought pamphlets, Sunrise Manor Senior Living, Emerald Gardens Assisted Care, full-color brochures showing old people playing shuffleboard and eating soup. "Dad, you don't need all this space," Ashley said, gesturing around our kitchen, "and maintaining it is expensive." "I'm 75, not 95, I told them. I can take care of myself. Danny shifted uncomfortably. We're just worried about you being alone. But I wasn't alone. Helen was in every room, every photograph, every corner of our life together. The Ferrari in the garage still smelled like her perfume when I sat in the driver's seat. They left the brochures on the kitchen counter. I threw them away the next morning. That's when I realized they weren't trying to help me. They were trying to help themselves to what Helen and I had built. But I still hoped I was wrong. In September 2023, 6 months after Helen's funeral, Danny called with exciting news. He and Ashley had found their dream house, a 4-bedroom colonial with a big yard for Lily. The only problem was the down payment. We're so close, Dad. Just $20,000 short. I'd been feeling guilty about being distant since Helen died. Maybe this was a chance to rebuild our relationship. How much do you need? I asked. $200,000 total. We can get a great mortgage rate, but we need cash for the down payment. $200,000. That was a quarter of my retirement savings. But Danny sounded hopeful for the first time since Helen's funeral, and Lily deserved a nice home. I can help, I said. Danny's voice brightened. Really? Dad, that's incredible. We'll pay you back with interest, better than any bank rate. We met at my lawyer Timothy Morrison's office to draw up the paperwork. Danny signed everything with a big smile, Ashley right beside him. The loan agreement was standard, 2.5% annual interest, with the house as collateral. This means everything to us, Ashley said, squeezing my hand. For the first time in months, I felt like family again. The house purchase went through smoothly. They moved in October, sent photos of Lily's new bedroom, invited me for Thanksgiving dinner. Ashley cooked Helen's turkey recipe and told me how grateful they were for my investment in their future. But when January came around, so did the first payment due date. And nothing. I didn't ask. Family doesn't nickel and dime family, right? That was my first mistake. By February, it was clear the loan payments weren't coming. Instead, Danny called with a new request. Dad, Lily's struggling in math. Her teacher thinks she needs tutoring. Lily was 7, bright as a penny, and the joy of my life. Of course I wanted to help her succeed. How much does tutoring cost? I asked. $180 a week, math and piano. Ashley found this great program. $180 every week. That was nearly $10,000 a year. But when I picked up Lily for ice cream the next Saturday, she hugged me tight and said, Thank you for my piano lessons, Grandpa Chuck. I'm learning Fur Elise. How do you put a price on your granddaughter's education? The tutoring started immediately. Every Thursday, Ashley would text me, Piano and math this week, $180. Thanks, with a heart emoji. I paid without question for 3 months. But something felt off during one of our ice cream dates. Lily mentioned her friend Emma at school. Emma's daddy says her grandpa is rich, so he has to pay for stuff, Lily said, licking her strawberry cone. What do you mean, sweetheart? Mommy told me that's what family does. Rich grandpas help their kids. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Ashley had been coaching my granddaughter to see me as a wallet, not a person. Did Mommy say Grandpa was rich? I asked carefully. Lily nodded. She says you have lots of money, but you're too old to spend it. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering when my family started seeing me as a resource to be managed rather than a person to be loved. But I still kept paying. Because I loved Lily, and because I hadn't learned my lesson yet. In May, Danny arrived at my house unannounced, practically bouncing with excitement. Dad, I have an incredible opportunity. A franchise opening. Subway sandwich shop at the new shopping center on 4th Street. He spread papers across my kitchen table. Financial projections, foot traffic studies, franchise agreements. Ashley had done her homework. The numbers look amazing, Danny continued. $85,000 for the franchise fee, another $40,000 for equipment. We'll break even in 8 months, guaranteed. $125,000. My throat felt dry. I don't know anything about the restaurant business, son. Neither did Dave Thomas when he started Wendy's. Ashley chimed in from the doorway. She'd been quiet, letting Danny make the pitch. Sometimes you have to take risks to build wealth. They had answers for every concern. Location analysis, demographic studies, even a business plan with projected profits. It looked professional, legitimate, exciting. Danny's face was so hopeful. This could set us up for life, Dad. Lily's college fund, our retirement, everything. I wanted my son to succeed. I wanted to believe in his dreams, so I signed the loan documents Timothy had prepared with the same terms as before, 2.5% interest, personal guarantee from Danny, legal binding agreement. The subway opened in July with a big ribbon-cutting ceremony. Danny sent photos of himself in a green apron, grinning behind the counter. For 2 months, business seemed good. Then October came around and Danny called with his voice flat and tired. "Dad, we need to talk." The franchise had failed. Poor location, unexpected competition from a new Chipotle across the street, higher labor costs than projected. All the money was gone. "I'm sorry, Dad, I really thought this would work." But I could hear Ashley in the background, talking on her phone about vacation plans. And that's when they first mentioned the Ferrari. "The thing is, Dad," Ashley said during that painful conversation, "you have assets that aren't generating income." We were sitting in my living room, Danny looking uncomfortable while Ashley took charge of the discussion about their failed business. "I mean, that car in the garage just sits there. When's the last time you even drove it?" "I drive it every few weeks," I said, though that wasn't entirely true. "Since Helen died, starting the engine felt like opening an old wound. But practically speaking," Ashley continued, "it's just taking up space, and if you need cash more than you need storage—" "The Ferrari isn't for sale," I said firmly. Danny finally spoke up. "Dad, we're not saying sell it, but maybe rent out the garage space, or consider if it's really the best use of your money." Ashley nodded enthusiastically. "Exactly. You could invest that capital and actually earn returns instead of paying insurance and maintenance on something you never use." I looked at my son, really looked at him. When had he started thinking like an accountant instead of a person? When had Helen's memory become a line item on a balance sheet? "That car is not leaving this garage," I said quietly. "It was your mother's wedding gift. It's staying here as long as I'm alive." Ashley made a little huffing sound. "Dad, I understand sentiment, but being practical about money isn't a bad thing, especially at your age. At my age, like I was some confused old man clinging to junk." That night, after they left, I sat in the Ferrari for an hour, breathing in the faint scent of Helen's lavender perfume. I could almost hear her voice telling me to stand my ground, but I could also hear something else, the sound of my family circling around what they thought I owed them. I decided it was time to make some phone calls. My 67th birthday fell on a Tuesday in September. I woke up expecting the usual call from Danny, maybe a card from Ashley, definitely a video chat with Lily singing Happy Birthday off-key. Instead, silence. I checked my phone throughout the morning. Nothing. Maybe they were planning a surprise visit. At lunch, I called Danny's cell, straight to voicemail. I tried Ashley's number. Same thing. By evening, I was worried something had happened. I drove to their house. No cars in the driveway. Newspapers piled up on the porch. A neighbor mentioned they'd seen Danny loading suitcases into his car that morning. It wasn't until Thursday that I got a text from Ashley. "Sorry, Vegas trip for my birthday surprise. Back Sunday." Vegas. They were in Las Vegas celebrating Ashley's birthday, which wasn't until November, while I spent my actual birthday eating leftover pasta and watching the news alone. No call, no card, no apology beyond that casual text with a heart emoji. But Emma called. Helen's daughter from her first marriage, who'd been part of our family since she was 12. Emma was in Oregon now, working as an architect, but she talked to me for 2 hours that night. "Dad, I can't believe they forgot," she said, using the name she'd called me since her adoption. "That's inexcusable." "People get busy," I said, though my voice sounded hollow even to me. "Not too busy for birthdays, not for family." After we hung up, I sat in the kitchen staring at the birthday cake I'd bought for myself, Helen's favorite lemon cake from the bakery downtown. I ate one slice and threw the rest away. Maybe they were just thoughtless. Maybe Ashley's surprise trip was more important than an old man's birthday. But deep down, I was starting to see a pattern. My brother James died of a heart attack in November. He was only 69, still working part-time at the hardware store, still coming over every Sunday to watch football and argue about the Seahawks. The funeral was on a Thursday. Small service, just family and close friends. James had been widowed for 5 years, no children, so I handled most of the arrangements. It was painful, lonely work, but someone had to do it. Danny and Ashley showed up late, slipped into the back row during the eulogy. Afterward,
As people were sharing memories and eating casserole, Danny pulled me aside. "Dad, I hate to bring this up now, but Ashley and I have been talking." We were standing in the church fellowship hall. Mrs. Henderson was serving coffee, and old Mr. Peterson was telling James stories to anyone who'd listen. "Uncle James left you some money, right? In his will?" I stared at my son. My brother's body wasn't even in the ground yet. "Danny, this isn't the time." I know. But we've been researching cryptocurrency investments. Bitcoin, Ethereum. The returns are incredible. If you invested Uncle James's inheritance instead of just letting it sit in savings."
Ashley appeared beside him, nodding earnestly. "The potential gains are enormous, Dad. James would want his money working for the family, not just collecting dust." Around us, people were sharing stories about James fixing their lawnmowers, helping with home repairs, being the kind of neighbor everyone wished they had, and my son was calculating how to profit from his death. "We're not having this conversation here," I said quietly. "When then?" Ashley pressed. "These opportunities don't wait." I walked away without answering, but I noticed how several of my relatives had overheard the exchange, how they looked at Danny and Ashley with obvious disapproval. Even at a funeral, my family couldn't stop seeing me as a business opportunity. Something bitter was growing in my chest. The real breaking point came during a December visit. Lily was playing in my living room while Danny and Ashley talked quietly in the kitchen. I was helping her build a puzzle when she asked an innocent question that made my blood run cold. "Grandpa Chuck, what's inheritance?" I looked at my 8-year-old granddaughter, her blonde pigtails bobbing as she fitted puzzle pieces together. "Where did you hear that word, sweetheart?" "Mommy says you should share your inheritance with Daddy before you die. She says it's better for taxes or something." I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. "What exactly did Mommy say?" "She told me to ask you about it. She said grandpas should give their money to their kids early so everyone benefits, and that you have way more money than you need." Lily kept working on the puzzle, oblivious to what she was telling me. But I could hear Ashley's voice coaching those words, using my granddaughter as a messenger for adult financial manipulation. "She also said the car in the garage is worth a lot of money, and you're being selfish keeping it when Daddy needs help with bills." My hands were shaking. I stood up and walked to the kitchen where Ashley was scrolling through real estate listings on her phone. "Ashley, I need to talk to you." She looked up with that bright smile she wore when she wanted something. "Of course. Is everything okay?" "Stay away from my granddaughter with your financial schemes." Her smile faltered. "I don't know what you mean." "Lily just asked me about inheritance taxes. She's 8 years old. She should be thinking about dolls and cartoons, not estate planning." Danny looked uncomfortable. "Dad, we were just explaining—" "You were using my granddaughter to manipulate me," I said quietly. "That's lower than I thought either of you would go." But I was wrong. There was still farther for them to fall. 2 weeks before Lily's birthday party, I decided to test them. It wasn't fair, maybe, but I needed to know who I could really count on. I called Danny on a Saturday morning, making my voice shaky and worried. "Son, I fell in the bathroom. I think I might have cracked a rib." "Oh no, Dad, are you okay?" "I'm sitting on the floor. It hurts to move. I don't think I can drive myself to the hospital." There was a pause. I could hear voices in the background. Ashley saying something about tea times and weather. "Dad, have you called 911? "I was hoping. Could you come help me? I'm scared to be alone right now." Another pause, longer this time. "The thing is, we're just heading out to golf with the Hendersons. Ashley set it up weeks ago. Could you maybe call an Uber to urgent care? Or call 911 if it's really serious?" I closed my eyes, sitting on my bathroom floor where I'd positioned myself for this call. "Never mind, son. I'll figure it out." "Great. Call us later and let us know how it goes, okay? We'll have our phones on silent during the game, but we'll check messages." They hung up to go play golf while their 75-year-old father sat injured and scared. But 20 minutes later, my phone rang again. Emma's voice, panicked and breathless. "Dad, I just had this weird feeling I needed to call you. Are you okay?" I told her about my fall. Within 3 hours, she was on a plane from Oregon. She spent the weekend with me, cooking soup and making sure I was comfortable, even though I confessed on Sunday that I hadn't actually fallen. "I needed to know," I said, Emma just hugged me. I would have come anyway. You don't have to test family love. But apparently with some family you do. Lily's 8th birthday party was scheduled for Saturday, January 15th. Danny called Wednesday with the details. We're doing it at our house this year, 2 o'clock. Ashley's making her famous chocolate cake. How many people? About 30. Family, neighbors, some of Lily's school friends. Oh, and Dad? Lily specifically asked for you to bring your camera. She wants Grandpa pictures. My camera. Helen had given it to me for our 20th anniversary. I'd documented every family gathering for decades with that old Canon. I'll be there, I said. Friday night I couldn't sleep. Something felt off about Danny's call. He'd been too cheerful, too normal. After months of tension and failed expectations, why was he suddenly acting like nothing had happened? I sat in my kitchen at midnight, looking at the birthday gift I'd wrapped for Lily, a bright red bicycle with streamers on the handlebars. $400 from Target. Ashley had mentioned Lily wanting a real bike, not a toy store one. My phone buzzed with a text from Ashley. Can't wait for tomorrow. Lily is so excited. Thanks for being the best grandpa ever. The best grandpa ever. After they'd ignored my birthday, pressured me at James's funeral, and used Lily as a messenger for their financial schemes. I looked at that text for a long time, trying to remember when Ashley had ever called me the best grandpa ever before. It felt like performance, like setup for something bigger. On impulse, I turned on my phone's voice recorder app and checked that it was working properly. I didn't know why. Just instinct, maybe. The same instinct that had made me save every loan document and every signed agreement in Timothy's office, just in case. Saturday afternoon arrived gray and drizzly, typical January weather in Portland. I pulled into Danny and Ashley's driveway at exactly 2 o'clock, my trunk loaded with Lily's bicycle and my camera bag. The house was full of voices and laughter, balloons tied to the mailbox, cars lining both sides of the street. Ashley had gone all out, streamers in the living room, a balloon arch over the kitchen doorway, and a chocolate cake with pink frosting roses that actually looked professional. Grandpa Chuck! Lily launched herself at my legs the moment I walked through the door. She was wearing a sparkly dress and a plastic tiara that kept slipping over one eye. Happy birthday, sweetheart. I handed her the gift bag with the bicycle keys. This one's too big for inside. It's in Grandpa's car. Her squeal of excitement drew half the party to the front windows. When she saw the red bike with its yellow streamers and white basket, she hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. It's perfect! It's exactly what I wanted. The next hour passed pleasantly. I took photos of Lily with her friends, chatted with neighbors I'd known for years, helped serve cake and punch. Several people commented on what a thoughtful grandfather I was, how lucky Lily was to have family who cared so much. Danny seemed relaxed, laughing with his golf buddies near the kitchen island. Ashley fluttered around playing hostess, making sure everyone had drinks and taking Instagram photos of the decorations. For a moment, it felt like the old days, like family. But I noticed Danny and Ashley exchanging glances across the room, little nods and signals I couldn't quite read. And twice, I caught Ashley whispering something to Danny that made him check his watch. Whatever they were planning, it was almost time. I made sure my phone's recorder was still running. At 3:30, just as parents were starting to gather up tired children and leftover cake, Danny stood up and tapped his fork against his beer bottle. Hey everyone, can I get your attention for a second? The room quieted. Lily looked up from her new coloring books, chocolate frosting still smudged on her cheek. I just wanted to thank everyone for coming to celebrate our little princess, Danny began, and I wanted to share some good news with our friends and family. Ashley moved beside him, that bright smile fixed on her face. Some of you know we've been having some financial challenges lately. The restaurant, the house payments, all the normal stresses of raising a family. People nodded sympathetically. Everyone knew about the failed Subway franchise. Well, I'm happy to announce that we've solved our problems. Danny's voice got louder, more confident. Thanks to my dad's generosity, we're back on track. My stomach dropped. See, Dad had this old Ferrari sitting in his garage. Beautiful car, but he never drives it anymore. So we sold it for $85,000, and that money is going to make all the difference for our family. The room went silent. 30 pairs of eyes turned toward me. It was a practical decision, Ashley chimed in. The car was just collecting dust, and we have real needs. School costs, medical bills, you know how it is. I felt my face burning. The glass of punch in my hand was shaking. Then Danny delivered the line that changed everything. Your wife is dead. Mine's alive. Priorities, Dad. He said it with a laugh, like it was clever, like Helen's memory was a punchline. Ashley actually clapped. The room stayed silent for what felt like hours but was probably only seconds. I stood up slowly, very carefully, and set my glass on the nearest table. I didn't say a word. Not a single word. 30 people watched me reach for my coat from the back of Danny's couch. The same coat Helen had bought me 3 Christmases ago, navy wool with leather buttons. Dad? Danny's voice had lost its confidence. Dad, where are you going? I picked up my camera bag and slung it over my shoulder. My hands were steady now, strangely calm. Grandpa Chuck? Lily's small voice cut through the tension. Are you okay? I stopped and looked at my granddaughter, still in her sparkly dress and crooked tiara. She didn't understand what had just happened. She shouldn't have to. I bent down and kissed the top of her head. Happy birthday, sweetheart. I love you very much. But you're leaving? The party isn't over. Grandpa has to go now. Ashley stepped forward. Chuck, Danny didn't mean to upset you. We thought you'd be happy that we found a solution. I looked at her for a long moment. Then I looked at my son, who was shifting uncomfortably by the kitchen island. Still, I said nothing. The silence was louder than any screaming match could have been. People were looking at their feet, checking their phones, suddenly very interested in helping their children find lost toys. I walked to the front door. Mrs. Peterson from next door caught my eye and gave me a small, sympathetic nod. She understood what had just happened, even if others didn't. As I reached for the door handle, I heard someone whisper, "How could he sell his dead mother's car?" I drove home in complete silence, my hands gripping the steering wheel, like it was the only thing keeping me anchored to the world. 3 days later, the real consequences began. That night, I sat in my empty garage staring at the oil stain where Helen's Ferrari had lived for 40 years. The stain was dark against the concrete, shaped like a teardrop. 40 years of tiny leaks, barely noticeable when the car was there, now the only evidence that something precious had existed in this space. I'd bought that 1967 Shelby Cobra with my signing bonus from Boeing. 26 years old, completely in love, and convinced I needed to prove I was worthy of Helen Walsh. The car cost more than my apartment rent for an entire year. Charles Bennett, Helen had said when I showed her the keys. Are you out of your mind? Probably, I'd admitted. But she'd laughed and kissed me. And we'd driven to the coast that very afternoon with the top down and her hair flying in the wind. Now I was sitting in a garage that smelled like motor oil and memories, while my son counted $85,000 he'd stolen from my wife's grave. I opened the glove compartment of my truck and pulled out the letters Helen had written me during our engagement. 43 letters, all saved, all reread a dozen times since her death. In the third letter, dated June 1982, she'd written something I'd forgotten. I love that you see the best in everyone, Charles. But don't let people mistake your kindness for weakness. Some boundaries are too important to cross. I folded the letter carefully and put it back in its envelope. Helen would have understood what I had to do. For the first time since her funeral, I cried. Helen had always been wiser than me about people. Where I saw potential, she saw patterns. Where I gave second chances, she set clear boundaries. I remembered a conversation from 1998 when Danny was 12 and testing every rule we'd ever made. He'd been caught stealing candy from the corner store, and I wanted to just pay for it and move on. Charles, Helen said as we sat in our kitchen after putting Danny to bed, you can't love someone out of bad choices. You can love them through the consequences, but the consequences still have to happen. He's just a kid, Helen. Kids make mistakes. Of course they do. But if we don't let him feel the weight of this mistake, he'll make bigger ones later. Love isn't protecting people from reality. Love is helping them learn to live in reality. She'd been right, of course. Danny had spent 3 Saturdays working at Mr. Kim's store for free, apologizing to customers and learning that stealing had real costs. He'd never taken anything again. But somewhere along the way, I'd stopped enforcing consequences. When Danny overdrew his bank account in college, I covered it. When he got speeding tickets, I paid them. When he needed down payments and business loans, I signed checks without asking hard questions. Helen had tried to warn me. "You're not helping him by solving every problem," she'd said during her last months, when Danny was already hinting about our wasted space and unnecessary expenses. "I just want him to succeed." Then let him fail a few times first. That's how people learn to succeed. I sat in that empty garage, hearing Helen's voice like she was sitting beside me. Some lessons can only be learned the hard way. Sunday morning, I called Timothy Morrison at home. Timothy had been our family lawyer for 20 years, handled Helen's estate, drawn up all my loan documents with Danny. He knew the whole situation. "Chuck, I'm so sorry to hear about the Ferrari. How are you holding up?" "I need to know my legal options, Tim." There was a pause. "Can you come in tomorrow morning? We should discuss this in person." Timothy's office was downtown, 20th floor with a view of the Willamette River. I'd been there dozens of times over the years for estate planning, will updates, and those loan agreements I'd signed without really thinking about the fine print. "The good news," Timothy said, spreading documents across his conference table, "is that you never actually transferred ownership of the Ferrari to Danny." "What do you mean?" "Look at this." He pointed to a document I'd forgotten about. "Remember when you had Danny help maintain the car while Helen was sick? You signed a temporary possession agreement, not an ownership transfer. Danny had access to the car for maintenance purposes only." I stared at the paper. So legally. Legally, Danny just sold stolen property, grand theft auto minimum, plus fraud, conversion, breach of trust. The room felt very quiet. Outside, Portland traffic hummed 20 floors below. "There's more," Timothy continued. "All those loan documents have acceleration clauses. If Danny commits any illegal act involving your property, the full amounts become immediately due, plus penalties." "How much are we talking about?" Timothy pulled out his calculator. $520,000, due within 30 days of notice. I thought about my son standing in that living room, telling 30 people that my dead wife didn't matter anymore. "Send the notice," I said. Monday afternoon, I walked into the Portland Police Bureau downtown office and filed a theft report. The detective, a tired-looking woman named Officer Martinez, took my statement while typing on an ancient computer. "So your son had permission to maintain the vehicle but not to sell it?" "Correct. I have the documentation." She looked at Timothy's legal brief. "Value of the stolen property? $1.3 million. Officer Martinez stopped typing and looked at me over her glasses. "Did you say million? It's a 1967 Shelby Cobra. They only made 50 of that particular model. My insurance appraisal from last year confirms the value. And your son sold it for $85,000 to someone named Jerry Williams, according to the title transfer I found online." Officer Martinez whistled softly. "Sir, this is grand theft auto. Minimum 5 years in prison if convicted. Are you sure you want to pursue this?" I thought about Danny's face when he said, "Your wife is dead. Mine's alive. Priorities, Dad," in front of 30 people. "I'm sure. We'll need to interview your son, and we'll need to locate the vehicle." "The vehicle is safe," I said. "I know where it is." That was the first surprise Danny would get. The Ferrari hadn't really been sold to a stranger. Timothy had arranged for Emma's business partner, a collector named Martin Reed, to purchase the car through an intermediary. The whole transaction had been legal theater designed to test exactly what Danny would do with the money. Now I knew. Danny had received $85,000 for a car worth $1.3 million, and every dollar of that money was evidence of theft. The police report was filed. The civil lawsuit would be next. Danny's phone was about to start ringing. Emma drove down from Oregon that same Monday evening. I was sitting at my kitchen table reviewing legal documents when I heard her key in the front door. "Dad, it's me." She'd been calling me Dad since she was 18, when Helen and I officially adopted her. Emma Collins Bennett, architect, businesswoman, and the daughter who'd never once asked me for money or made me feel like a burden. "I brought dinner," she said, holding up bags from my favorite Thai restaurant. "And wine. I figured you might need both." We ate pad thai and drank Helen's good wine while Emma listened to the whole story. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "You know I've been your primary beneficiary for 3 years, right?" she said finally. "Since your mom died, yes." "Does Danny know?" "No reason for him to know. He's never asked about my will." Emma set down her wineglass. "Dad, there's something I need to tell you about the Ferrari sale." My stomach clenched. What about it? Martin Reed, my business partner? He's been looking for a Shelby Cobra for 2 years. When you mentioned Danny's hints about selling the car, we made arrangements. What kind of arrangements? Martin agreed to buy the car if Danny ever actually went through with it. We set up a legitimate sale through Jerry Williams, Martin's cousin, to make everything look normal. The plan was to return the car to you immediately and prosecute Danny for theft. I stared at my stepdaughter. You've been planning this? Insurance, Dad. I know my stepbrother. I've watched him manipulate you for years. Helen asked me to protect you before she died. The room felt like it was spinning. Your mother knew? She knew exactly what Danny was becoming, and she knew you'd need help seeing it clearly. Emma reached across the table and took my hand. The Ferrari is safe. It's in Martin's climate-controlled garage, and Danny just committed grand theft auto on a car we can return any time we want. Now I understand what quiet justice really looks like. Tuesday morning, Timothy called with the results of his financial audit. Chuck, you need to sit down for this. I was already sitting, but I gripped my coffee mug tighter. Danny owes you $520,000 across all the loans, but here's the interesting part. That restaurant failure? It wasn't a failure. What do you mean? I pulled the business records. The Subway franchise was actually profitable for 6 of the 8 months it was open. Monthly revenue between $12,000 and $15,000, expenses around $8,000. My coffee went cold in my hands. Then why did they close? Because Danny and Ashley were transferring the profits to offshore accounts. Look at these bank records. Timothy faxed over documents that made my vision blur. Wire transfers to Cayman Islands accounts, shell company formations in Delaware, financial maneuvers I didn't understand but recognized as deliberate deception. They planned to declare bankruptcy and stiff you for the loan while hiding their actual profits overseas. How much money are we talking about? Roughly $200,000 that should have gone toward paying you back. Instead, it's sitting in accounts under Ashley's maiden name. I set down my coffee mug very carefully, so they weren't struggling, they were stealing. Systematically, yes. The house they bought with your down payment. They've already taken out a second mortgage against it. That money also went offshore. Can we recover it? With the criminal charges, yes. Fraud, money laundering, breach of contract. The courts can freeze and recover hidden assets. I thought about Ashley's text message. Thanks for being the best grandpa ever. While she was literally stealing from me. File everything, I said. I want every dollar back, with interest. Chuck, this could destroy them financially. Good. Maybe they'll learn what consequences feel like. Wednesday afternoon brought the call I'd been waiting for. Danny's voice was shaky, confused. Dad, there's something weird about the car sale. This Jerry Williams guy. He says he's returning the Ferrari to some collector in Oregon. He says the whole sale was some kind of setup. I sat in my recliner, Helen's reading lamp casting a warm circle in the growing darkness. What exactly did Mr. Williams tell you, son? He said you knew about the sale beforehand, that someone named Martin Reed was the real buyer. Dad, what's going on? Martin Reed is Emma's business partner. They collect vintage cars. Emma? What does Emma have to do with this? There was real panic in Danny's voice now. The confident man who'd humiliated me at a birthday party was starting to understand he'd walked into a trap. Emma has been watching you manipulate me for months, Danny. When you started hinting about selling the Ferrari, we made arrangements to protect it. Protect it? Dad, I don't understand. You stole a car worth $1.3 million and sold it for $85,000. The buyer was working with us the entire time. Every transaction was recorded. Every dollar you received was evidence of theft. Silence on the other end of the line. The Ferrari is safe, I continued. It's in Martin's garage, completely undamaged. But you committed grand theft auto on camera, with 30 witnesses to your motive. Dad, please, I didn't know. You didn't know because you never asked. You just assumed you could take whatever you wanted. We can fix this. I'll return the money. Too late, son. The police report is already filed. I hung up and turned off my phone. 40 years of parenting, and this was the first time I'd ever hung up on my child. It wouldn't be the last. Thursday morning, the legal machinery started grinding forward. Timothy hand-delivered the demand letters while I watched from my kitchen window. The acceleration clauses in all of Danny's loans were triggered by his theft conviction. $520,000, plus accumulated interest, plus legal fees, due within 30 days. But the real surprise was the asset protection I'd put in place after Helen's death. 3 years ago, when Emma officially became my primary beneficiary, we'd also set up an irrevocable trust. My house, my retirement accounts, my investments, everything was legally protected from creditors, lawsuits, and gold-digging family members. Danny couldn't touch a penny of what Helen and I had built. "The house transferred to the trust is bulletproof," Timothy explained over the phone. "Even if Danny sues, even if he files for guardianship claiming you're incompetent, the assets are beyond his reach." "What about the loans he owes me?" "Those become collection actions against his assets. The house he bought with your money, his business interests, any bank accounts we can find. We can garnish wages, seize property, freeze accounts." I thought about the offshore money Ashley had hidden. And the hidden assets? "The FBI will handle that. International financial fraud is a federal crime." My phone rang. Danny again. I let it go to voicemail. The message was 17 minutes long, crying, pleading, promising to change, begging me to stop this madness and think about Lily. But I was thinking about Lily. I was thinking about what kind of father she deserved, what kind of values she should learn, what kind of family legacy I wanted to leave behind. I deleted the message without listening to all of it. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt, and some people only learn respect when everything else gets taken away. Friday evening, Danny showed up at my door. I watched through the peephole as he rang the doorbell repeatedly, then pounded with his fists. "Dad! Dad! I know you're in there. We need to talk." I didn't answer, but I turned on my phone recorder again. "Please, just 5 minutes. I can explain everything." After 20 minutes of pounding and pleading, he finally left. But Saturday morning brought a phone call I did answer. "Dad, please don't hang up." Danny's voice was hoarse, desperate. Nothing like the confident man who had announced my humiliation to a room full of people. "I talked to a lawyer. He says you're trying to destroy my life." "I'm collecting what you owe me," I said calmly. $500,000? Dad, I don't have $500,000. "Then you shouldn't have stolen from me." "I didn't steal. The car was just sitting there. You never drove it." I closed my eyes. Even now he didn't understand. "That car was your mother's memory, Danny. It was the last piece of her I had left, and you sold it to pay for your lies and greed. Mom's been dead for 2 years. She doesn't need a car." The same words he'd said at the party. No remorse, no understanding, no growth. "This isn't about money, son. This is about respect. This is about boundaries. This is about learning that actions have consequences." "So what, you're going to put me in jail? Take away my house? Make my daughter homeless?" "I'm going to let you face the results of your choices." "But I'm your son." "Yes," I said quietly. "You're my son. And that makes what you did even worse." I hung up and turned off my phone. For the first time in months, my house felt peaceful. Sunday afternoon, Timothy and I drove to Danny and Ashley's house together. I'd asked him to come as a witness and legal representative. This would be our final conversation. Ashley opened the door looking haggard, her usually perfect makeup smeared. "Chuck, thank God. We need to straighten this out." "Is Danny here?" "He's in the living room." "Chuck, this has gone too far. We can work something out." Danny was sitting on the couch where he'd shown me those Subway franchise papers months ago. He looked like he'd aged 5 years in 1 week. "Dad," he stood up uncertainly. I remained by the front door. Timothy stayed beside me, briefcase in hand. "I'm here to offer you 3 choices," I said without preamble. "Dad, please. Choice 1, plead guilty to grand theft auto, serve your prison sentence, and hope for the minimum 5 years. Ashley made a small sound of distress. "Choice 2, file for bankruptcy, lose everything you own, and still face criminal prosecution." "Or?" Danny's voice was barely audible. "Choice 3, full repayment of all loans within 60 days. Public apology to every person who heard you disrespect your mother's memory, and no contact with me for 2 years while you figure out what kind of man you want to be." 60 days? Dad, that's impossible. "Sell the house you bought with my money. Liquidate the offshore accounts Ashley set up. Recover the funds you embezzled from the restaurant." Ashley went white. "How did you—" "We know everything," Timothy said quietly. Bank records, wire transfers, shell companies, all of it. Danny slumped back onto the couch. And if I do all that, pay back everything, apologize, stay away for 2 years? Then maybe we can rebuild some kind of relationship. Maybe. What about Lily? Ashley demanded. She needs her grandfather. I looked at my daughter-in-law for a long moment. Lily needs a grandfather who teaches respect and consequences, not one who enables theft and manipulation. We left them sitting in their living room,
staring at papers they couldn't afford to ignore. They chose option 4, fight back. It was the worst decision they could have made. Within 3 days, Danny and Ashley launched their counterattack. It was vicious, desperate, and completely predicted by Timothy's experience with failed family businesses. First came the lawsuit alleging elder abuse and financial exploitation. They claimed I was mentally incompetent and had been manipulated by Emma into making irrational financial decisions. Timothy laughed when he read the filing. Chuck, they're claiming you lack the mental capacity to manage your own affairs while simultaneously suing you for being too clever with your legal planning. Pick a lane. Next, Ashley called Emma directly, screaming into the phone about stealing inheritance from Danny's daughter and turning a grandfather against his own blood. Emma recorded the call.
23 minutes of threats, profanity, and demands that Emma talk sense into me before this family destroys itself. Then came the social media campaign. Ashley posted photos of Lily looking sad, with captions about cruel grandfathers and family members who choose money over love. She shared GoFundMe links for their legal defense against elder abuse. The post got 7 likes, mostly from people who didn't know the whole story, but the worst was what they did to Lily. They told her I was sick and angry and didn't want to see her anymore. They used my granddaughter's confusion and sadness as emotional ammunition. When Mrs. Peterson from next door showed me Ashley's Instagram posts, I felt something inside me go completely cold. That's it, I told Timothy. No more mercy. What do you want to do? I want to disappear, completely, and I want them to understand what permanent consequences look like. Chuck, once you do this, there's no going back. I thought about Helen's letter. Some boundaries are too important to cross. Good, I said. I'm done going back. The house sold in 18 days to Emma's architecture firm for development. Everything happened so fast, Danny couldn't even file legal objections before the closing. I packed 40 years of marriage into 12 boxes and moved to Emma's guest house in Oregon. My mail forwarded to Timothy's office. My phone number changed. My bank accounts transferred to institutions Danny had never heard of. From the outside, it looked like I'd vanished from the earth. Danny called Timothy's office 23 times the first week. Where is he? I need to talk to my father. Mr. Bennett is no longer available for direct communication, Timothy's secretary would respond. All contact must go through legal counsel. This is insane. He can't just disappear. But I could, and I had. The legal machinery continued grinding without me. Asset seizure orders on Danny's house, garnishment notices for his wages, FBI investigation into Ashley's offshore accounts. From my new bedroom window, I could see Emma's flower garden and hear the sound of children playing in the distance. No one knew where I was except Emma, Timothy, and Martin Reed, who'd officially returned the Ferrari to its rightful owner. Every morning, I drove Helen's car through the Oregon countryside with the top down and the radio playing her favorite songs. For the first time since her death, I felt like I could breathe. Danny and Ashley were learning what it meant to face consequences without a safety net. No more dad to bail them out, no more grandfather to manipulate, no more family bank to raid. Just themselves, their choices, and reality. I'd spent 75 years believing that family love meant endless forgiveness. Helen's death had taught me something different. Sometimes love means walking away. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is let people learn from their mistakes. 1 month after I disappeared, Timothy sent me the first update on Danny and Ashley's situation. The bank had called in their mortgage immediately upon discovering the grand theft conviction. $200,000 in acceleration penalties, plus the original loan amount, due within 30 days. They couldn't refinance because of the criminal charges. They couldn't borrow against the house because it was already mortgaged beyond its value. They couldn't sell because the market had softened and they owed more than it was worth. They're trying to negotiate a payment plan. Timothy reported during our weekly phone call. The bank isn't interested. Ashley's offshore accounts had been frozen by federal investigators. The shell companies dissolved. The hidden money from the restaurant, all of it locked up in legal proceedings that would take years to resolve. What about their living expenses? Danny's working double shifts at an automotive repair shop. Ashley's back to nursing, picking up weekend shifts. But it's not nearly enough to cover their legal fees and the asset seizure orders. I was sitting on Emma's back porch drinking coffee and watching hummingbirds at her feeder. The Oregon morning was crisp and clean, nothing like the heavy weight I'd carried for months in Portland. Any word from them? Ashley calls my office daily, demanding to know where you are, threatening new lawsuits, claiming Lily is traumatized by your absence. And Danny? Radio silence from Danny. I think he's finally beginning to understand the scope of what he's lost. I sipped my coffee and watched a red-tailed hawk circle overhead. Some lessons take time to sink in. But they were learning. 6 weeks after my disappearance, Ashley filed for divorce. Timothy called with the news on a Tuesday morning. She's claiming Danny misrepresented his family's financial situation when they married. Fraud, breach of marital contract, the works. I wasn't surprised. Ashley had married Danny thinking he was the son of a wealthy engineer who would eventually inherit a fortune. Instead, she'd gotten a man whose father had cut him off completely and whose criminal record made him essentially unemployable. She's demanding full custody of Lily and spousal support, Timothy continued, plus half of whatever assets they have left, which is basically nothing. Poor Lily. Actually, there's something interesting in the custody filing. Ashley's asking the court to allow Lily to maintain a relationship with her paternal grandfather, despite the parents' legal troubles. I set down my coffee mug. What does that mean? It means Ashley's finally figured out that having a wealthy grandfather could benefit Lily, and by extension, her custodial support payments. She's basically asking the court to order you to resume contact with your granddaughter. The audacity was breathtaking. Even in divorce proceedings, Ashley was trying to manipulate me through Lily. Can she do that? Not unless you want her to. Courts can't force grandparent relationships, but Chuck, Lily is 8 years old. None of this is her fault. I stared out Emma's kitchen window at the garden Helen would have loved. Yellow roses climbing a white trellis, exactly like the ones she'd planted at our first house. What do you think Helen would want? I asked. Timothy was quiet for a moment. I think Helen would want Lily to know her grandfather, but on your terms, not Ashley's. That afternoon, I drove to the local courthouse and filed papers of my own. If Ashley wanted to use my granddaughter as a pawn, she was about to learn how expensive that game could be. By month 2, the story had spread through every social circle Danny and Ashley had ever known. Mrs. Peterson from next door called Emma to share the neighborhood gossip. Everyone's talking about what happened at that birthday party, selling his dead mother's car and saying those awful things. People are disgusted. Their church congregation had heard the story from the families who'd witnessed the humiliation. Pastor Williams called Timothy's office to ask if there was any way the church could help with reconciliation. Forgiveness is important, he said, but so is repentance. Until Danny acknowledges the harm he caused, there's nothing to reconcile. Danny's golf buddies had distanced themselves after learning about the theft charges. The neighborhood barbecues stopped including invitations to their house. Even Lily's school friends' parents began finding excuses to avoid playdates. It's not just the money, Mrs. Peterson explained. It's the disrespect. In front of all those people, his own father, whose wife just died. People don't forget something like that. Ashley tried to control the narrative through Facebook posts about family misunderstandings and legal complications blown out of proportion. But truth has a way of spreading faster than spin. The real turning point came when someone posted the recording of Danny's birthday announcement. Ashley had filmed it herself and posted it proudly before realizing how it would look to people outside their bubble. Your wife is dead, mine's alive. Priorities, Dad, followed by Ashley's applause. The video went viral in their social circles, shared, commented on, dissected. Public judgment is often harsher than legal judgment. Danny and Ashley were learning that reputation, once lost, is almost impossible to recover. Sometimes the court of public opinion delivers justice more effectively than any lawyer. 3 months after I disappeared,
Emma handed me a letter that had been forwarded through Timothy's office. My name written in crayon, with backwards letters and careful cursive.
Dear Grandpa Chuck, it began, I hope you are okay. Mommy says you are sick, but Daddy says you are mad. I don't know why you are mad at me. Did I do something wrong? My hands shook as I read my granddaughter's words. I miss our ice cream dates and when you take pictures at my parties. Mommy and Daddy fight a lot now, and I don't like it. I heard them say bad words about you, but I think you are nice. Can you write me back? I promise I will be good. She'd signed it Love, Lily, with a drawing of 2 stick figures holding hands under a rainbow. I sat on Emma's couch for 20 minutes, staring at that drawing. What are you thinking, Dad? Emma asked gently. I'm thinking an 8-year-old girl shouldn't have to pay for her parents' mistakes. That afternoon, I drove to Portland for the first time in 3 months. Not to Danny and Ashley's house, but to Timothy's office, where I signed papers establishing a supervised visitation schedule with Lily. 1 Saturday afternoon per month at Emma's house in Oregon. Transportation provided by a neutral party. No contact with Danny or Ashley. Timothy hand-delivered the proposal to Ashley's lawyer. She agreed immediately, partly because she genuinely wanted Lily to have a relationship with her grandfather, but mostly because it established legal precedent for future financial support. 2 weeks later, Lily visited Emma's house for the first time. She was shy at first, confused about why we couldn't meet at Grandpa's old house, uncertain about this new normal. But when I showed her the Ferrari, safely restored to its garage, her face lit up with wonder. You got it back. I did, sweetheart. Some things are too important to lose. We spent the afternoon drawing pictures and eating ice cream, carefully avoiding any mention of her parents' legal troubles. Children are remarkably adaptable. Adults could learn from their example. 4 months after the birthday party humiliation, Timothy called with news that would change everything again. Danny's lawyer wants to negotiate a settlement, full asset forfeiture, guilty plea to reduce charges, and a payment plan for the civil damages. What kind of payment plan? 20 years at 2% interest. Basically, he'd be paying you back for the rest of his working life. I was sitting in Emma's garden, watching her plant bulbs for next spring's flowers. Helen had always said gardening was about faith in the future. What about the apology? He's willing to write a formal letter of apology for the court record. Not what I asked for, Tim. I wanted a public apology to everyone who heard him disrespect Helen's memory. Chuck, he's broken. Ashley took Lily and moved to her mother's house in California. He's lost everything. Maybe it's time to show mercy. I thought about Helen's last words to me. Don't let anyone diminish what we built together, Charles. But don't let bitterness diminish you either. Send him one final offer, I said. Full repayment over 15 years. Public apology posted on social media where everyone can see it. And one personal letter to me explaining what he's learned. And if he agrees, then maybe we can start over, slowly, carefully, with boundaries. A week later, Timothy forwarded Danny's handwritten response. 3 pages of small, careful script. The first 2 pages were apology to me, to Helen's memory, to everyone who'd witnessed his cruelty. But the 3rd page was different, raw, honest. Dad, it began, I don't know who I became. I don't know when I started seeing you as a bank instead of a father. I don't know when I decided Mom's memory was worth less than my immediate comfort. But I know I was wrong. I folded the letter and put it in my desk drawer, next to Helen's engagement letters. Some apologies arrived too late, but this one felt like a beginning. Danny's public apology appeared on Facebook, Instagram, and in a letter to the editor of the Portland Tribune. Simple, direct, taking full responsibility. I publicly humiliated my father after he'd spent years supporting my family financially and emotionally. I sold my late mother's Ferrari without permission and told my dad that his dead wife didn't matter as much as my living one. I was cruel, ungrateful, and completely wrong. I'm spending the next 15 years paying back money I stole, but it will take longer than that to earn back the respect I threw away. The post got 847 shares and 312 comments, mostly supportive of me and critical of Danny's previous behavior. But the letter that mattered most arrived by certified mail, addressed only to me. 2 sentences in Danny's handwriting. I forgive you, but I won't forget. If you ever learn to respect what matters, call Emma. I read those words sitting in Emma's kitchen with Helena's Ferrari visible through the window and the sound of my granddaughter's laughter coming from the garden. I forgive you, but I won't forget. Not the ending I'd expected when this started. Not the total reconciliation that Hallmark movies promise, but something more honest than either hatred or false forgiveness. Boundaries with love, consequences with hope, justice tempered by the possibility of redemption. Danny called Emma's house 3 days later. We talked for 17 minutes about Lily, about his job at the auto shop, about small things that mattered. We didn't mention the Ferrari or the money or the birthday party. But at the end of the call he said, "Dad, I'm sorry, really sorry." And for the first time in months, I believed him. Some relationships can't be repaired, but some can be rebuilt, slowly, with better foundations. Helen would have understood. Love doesn't mean accepting disrespect, but it does mean hoping people can change. Now I want to ask you something. If your own child publicly humiliated you after everything you'd sacrificed for them, what would you do? Would you forgive and forget, or would you teach them a lesson they'd never forget? Let me know in the comments. If this story hit home for you, there are more like it coming. Stories about boundaries, respect, and what happens when family takes advantage of unconditional love. Subscribe and ring that notification bell, because next week I'm sharing the story of a mother who discovered her daughter was stealing from her medical fund. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happened next.